Hey, you men who think you're fine, but when night comes, you can't sleep. Trevor Phillips here. Driving alone tonight. No passenger, no conversation, no noise to hide behind. Just me, the road, and that quiet pressure that creeps in when you're not performing for anybody. Funny thing about being alone, you stop acting. You stop smiling at nothing. You stop making jokes. You stop pretending the weight on your chest is just stress. You hear the truth in your own breathing. And the truth is, a lot of men out there are defeated, not dead, not broke, not homeless, not even unlucky. Defeated. There's a difference. A defeated man still gets up, still goes to work, still pays bills, still answers, "I'm good," when someone asks. But inside, he already surrendered. He doesn't dream anymore. He doesn't fight for anything. He doesn't believe the future will be better. He just hopes it won't get worse. That's defeat. And it doesn't happen in one big tragedy. It happens in slow, invisible losses. A promise you broke to yourself, then forgot you ever made. A risk you didn't take, then called being responsible. A relationship that drained you, but you stayed because leaving felt like failure. A job that made you numb, but you stayed because change felt dangerous. And over time, you stop calling it a temporary situation. You start calling it life. That's when defeat sets in. You ever meet a man who used to have fire in his eyes, and now he looks like he's waiting for permission to die? Yeah, that guy didn't lose one battle. He lost 1,000 small ones, quietly until his spirit learned a new habit. Don't hope. Hope is dangerous when you've been disappointed too many times. So you protect yourself. You lower expectations. You stop wanting. You stop asking. You stop believing anyone will truly see you. And you call it being realistic. No, it's armor. And armor gets heavy. The defeated man's armor is made of sarcasm, silence, and routine. He wakes up, does the day, comes home, collapses, scrolls, sleeps if he can, then repeats. He doesn't feel joy. He feels relief when nothing goes wrong. He doesn't feel passion. He feels distraction. He doesn't feel proud. He feels less ashamed than yesterday. That's not living. That's management. And the most humiliating part is that the world applauds it. They call you stable. They call you reliable. They call you mature. Nobody calls you alive, because your aliveness makes people uncomfortable. Your hunger makes people nervous. Your truth makes weak people feel exposed, so they prefer you defeated, quiet, contained, and you cooperate because you learned the oldest lesson men learn. If you make the room uncomfortable, you become the problem. So you keep your mouth shut. You keep your head down. You'll keep your wants small enough to fit in your pocket. That's how you become a defeated man without anyone ever noticing. Now, since I'm alone, I'm going to say something men don't like to admit. Sometimes you're defeated because you lost. You really did. You tried something and it failed. You trusted someone and they betrayed you. You built a plan and life burned it down. You put your heart in the wrong hands and they crushed it like it was nothing. And after enough of that, you don't want to try again. Not because you can't, but because you don't want to feel that kind of pain twice. So you stop risking. You stop being vulnerable. You stop being ambitious. You stop being honest. You tell yourself it's better this way. That's defeat talking. Because a man who's truly alive would rather get hurt than stay numb. A defeated man chooses numbness because numbness feels safe. But numbness has a cost. It costs you your identity. It costs you your identity. It costs you your edge. It costs you the part of you that used to wake up excited. It costs you the ability to love without fear. It costs you the ability to respect yourself. And you can't pay that cost forever without something breaking. It breaks in your sleep first. That's why you can't sleep. Not because you need melatonin or a new pillow. Because your mind knows you're living a life that doesn't match the man you are supposed to be. Your mind is not your enemy. Your mind is your judge. And the judge doesn't care about excuses. The judge cares about truth. So let's talk about the truth you keep avoiding. You didn't become defeated overnight. You trained yourself into it. Every time you chose silence instead of honesty. Every time you chose comfort instead of growth. Every time you stayed because leaving would be messy. Every time you let someone disrespect you and called it not worth the fight. Every time you postponed your dream and told yourself you'll do it one day. You trained defeat, and training works both ways. That's the good news buried under the bad. If you can train yourself into defeat, you can train yourself out of it. But first, you have to do the thing defeated men hate most. You have to look at yourself without pity. Pity feels kind, but it's poison. Pity turns into excuses. Excuses turn into more defeat. So don't pity yourself. Respect yourself enough to tell the truth. Here's a question for you, and don't dodge it by making it philosophical. When did you stop believing in your own future? Was it after a breakup? A betrayal? A job loss? A humiliation? A moment you don't talk about? Pinpoint it. Because defeat isn't random. It has a birthplace. And if you find where it started, you can understand what you've been protecting yourself from. That protection has a price, and you've been paying it with your life. Now, let me confess something, because I'm not going to preach at you from some high horse. I'm not a role model. I'm a warning label. I've been defeated before. Not the kind where you cry on a couch, the kind where you realize you've become the thing you hate, where you look at your own choices and you can't even defend them anymore. And you know what the worst part was? Not the consequences. The worst part was the moment I realized I was pretending. Pretending I didn't care. Pretending I wasn't scared. Pretending I didn't want something clean and simple like peace. Men do that. They pretend they don't want peace because peace sounds weak, like surrender. But peace isn't surrender. Peace is what happens when you stop living against yourself. A defeated man lives against himself every day. He says yes when he means no. He smiles when he wants to scream. He stays when he should leave. He works when he should rest. He laughs when he feels empty. He calls it normal. That's why he's defeated. So here's where we're going. In the next part, I'm going to talk about the 5 things that create a defeated man money. Trust, marriage, war inside the mind, and what happens when you get cornered. Because defeated men aren't born. They're built. And anything built can be rebuilt. If you're willing to pay the price. You want to know how a man gets defeated without anyone noticing? He gets defeated in places the world applauds. Money, trust, marriage. 3 pillars people tell you will make you a real man. And yeah, they can. But they can also crush you if you build your identity on them. Let's start with money. Money is the first judge you meet. You can pretend you don't care, but the world will remind you. Bills don't care about your feelings. Rent doesn't care about your childhood. Debt doesn't care about your stress. So men chase money. That part is normal. But here's where it turns into defeat. When money stops being a tool and becomes a scoreboard, you start measuring your worth in numbers, salary, car, house, the kind of restaurants you can afford without looking at the prices. And then you start competing, not with enemies, but with ghosts. Your father's expectations, your friend's success, some guy from high school who made it, the imaginary version of you who took the risk and won. You keep running because if you stop, you'll have to admit you don't even know what you're chasing anymore. That's defeat. A defeated man is not a man who has less money. A defeated man is a man who's owned by the need to prove himself. So he works late. He misses sleep. He misses his own life. He tells himself he'll relax when things settle down. They don't settle down. The world always asks for more output, more performance, more patience, more sacrifice. And you, good man, you keep paying. Because you were trained to believe your value is in what you provide. So you become useful. And useful men get used. That's not bitterness, that's physics. Now, trust. Trust is where defeated men bleed quietly. Because trust is one of the last noble things men still want to believe in. You want to believe loyalty matters. You want to believe if you stand by people, they'll stand by you. You want to believe love has rules. But trust doesn't survive on hope. Trust survives on standards. And most defeated men have weak standards, not because they're stupid, but because they're hungry. Hungry to be chosen, hungry to be appreciated, hungry to be seen as the good one, hungry to feel like they belong somewhere. So they trust too fast, they forgive too much, they ignore red flags and call them just stress, just a phase, just how they are. And then betrayal happens. Not always dramatic. Sometimes betrayal is just neglect. A friend who never shows up, a partner who stops respecting you, a family member who only calls when they need something. It's small, it's quiet, it's constant, and the defeated man takes it because he thinks leaving makes him cruel. Leaving makes him selfish. Leaving makes him alone. And loneliness scares him more than disrespect. So he stays. And each time he stays, something inside him gets smaller. That's the part nobody sees. They see the smile. They see you show up. They see you being reliable. They don't see the little deaths. The moment you swallow your anger. The moment you swallow your disappointment. The moment you swallow your desire and call it maturity. Eventually you swallow so much you forget what your real voice sounds like. That's defeat. Now, marriage. Marriage is where defeat can become permanent if you're not careful. Because marriage has a beautiful lie inside it. That commitment will fix everything. It won't. Commitment amplifies whatever is already there. If there's respect, commitment deepens it. If there's contempt, commitment turns it into a slow poison. And a lot of men marry thinking marriage is a finish line. They think once you lock it in, life becomes stable, predictable, safe. But marriage is not a finish line. It's a daily negotiation. And defeated men are terrible negotiators because they negotiate against themselves first. They go into marriage with a quiet fear. What if I'm not enough? So they try to earn love through performance. They become the provider, the fixer, the good husband, the man who never complains. And it looks noble until you realize that love doesn't respect a man who has no boundaries. Because boundaries are proof you respect yourself. And if you don't respect yourself, why should anyone else? Now, I'm not blaming women. Don't do that simple-minded thing where you turn every truth into a gender war. That's weak. That's lazy. This is about men. You train people how to treat you. You train your partner what you tolerate. You train your friends what you accept. You train your boss how far you'll bend. Defeated men train the world to step on them. And then they act surprised when it happens. So marriage becomes a place where you slowly disappear. You stop asking for affection because you don't want to be rejected. You stop bringing up problems because you don't want conflict. You stop talking about your dreams because you don't want to feel stupid. And then one day you're sitting across from your partner and you realize you become polite roommates. You share a house, but not a life. You share bills, but not a soul. And you tell yourself, this is normal. No, it's common, not normal. Common is not the same as healthy. Now let's connect the three: money, trust, marriage. Here's the pattern. Money pressures you to perform. Trust pressures you to endure. Marriage pressures you to stay. Perform, endure, stay. And if you do all three without standards, you become the perfect defeated man. Reliable, quiet, useful, invisible. That's why you're driving alone at night in your head, even when there are people in your house. Because you're alone emotionally. Because nobody knows what you really want. And you don't know if you're even allowed to want it anymore. Now, here's the confession inside this part. A lot of men don't lose their dreams because someone stole them. They lose their dreams because they got tired of fighting for them. And I get it. Fighting is exhausting. But you know what's more exhausting? Living a life that feels like a long punishment for being responsible. So what do? You don't burn your life down. Not yet. You do something harder and cleaner. You pick one place where you've been living like a defeated man and you change your behavior. Not your feelings. Behavior. Because your feelings will lie to protect your habits. Your behavior tells the truth. If you're overworking, you set a boundary with time. If you're being used, you remove access. If your marriage is dead, you start telling clean truth and demanding real change, or you plan your exit with dignity. And yeah, That will scare you, because the defeated man fears one thing more than pain. He fears being seen. Seen as needy, seen as angry, seen as imperfect, seen as the bad guy. But being seen is the price of being alive. In the next part, I'm going to talk about the war inside a man's head, how defeat becomes a mindset, how a man gets cornered, and what happens right before he either explodes or disappears for good, because that moment is where most men lose everything. And it's also where a few men finally wake up. You ever notice how the highway at night makes the inside of your head louder? That's not the road, that's not the night, that's your mind finally getting a turn to speak. Because during the day, you drown it out with tasks. You drown it out with work, with noise, with jokes, with screens, with being needed. And you call that being productive. But when you're alone, truly alone, the war starts. Yeah, war, not bullets and flags. The kind of war nobody sees. The war inside a man's head. The war between who you are and who you thought you'd be. Defeat doesn't begin when you lose. It begins when you stop believing you can win again. That belief dies in your mind first. It dies in the way you talk to yourself, in the way you make plans and then sabotage them, in the way you say, "It doesn't matter," when it matters more than anything. You know the defeated man's language? Whatever. It's fine. Who cares? I'm used to it. Doesn't change anything. Those aren't words, they're surrender flags. And you wave them so often you forget you're doing it. Now, here's the part men hate. The war inside your head is not caused by the world. It's caused by you living against your own truth. Every time you swallow something real, it doesn't disappear. It turns into pressure. Pressure turns into tension. Tension turns into insomnia. Insomnia turns into numbness. Numbness turns into a man who's still alive but already quit. And then you start thinking you're broken. You're not broken. You're cornered. Cornered by your own habits. Cornered by the life you built on avoiding conflict. Cornered by the fear of being the bad guy. Cornered by the need to be seen as good. That's the corner most defeated men live in. And when a man lives in a corner long enough, he becomes dangerous in one of two ways. Not dangerous to others necessarily. Dangerous to himself and his life. He either explodes or he disappears. Let's talk explosion first. Explosion is what happens when you've been polite for too long. You've been swallowing disrespect, swallowing disappointment, swallowing exhaustion, swallowing loneliness, swallowing the feeling that nobody would notice if you vanished. And then one day, someone pushes the wrong button. A small comment, a careless joke, a look of contempt, a demand at the wrong time. And you snap. Not because of that moment, but because of the years behind it. And here's the tragedy. When you explode, people don't see the years. They only see the blast. They call you unstable. They call you crazy. They call you angry. They call you the problem. And the defeated man hears that and thinks, see, I should have stayed quiet. So after explosion comes the second defeat, shame. Shame makes you retreat. Shame makes you apologize for having a spine. Shame makes you promise to go back to being small. And then the cycle continues. Now, disappearance. Disappearance is the cleaner, more mature defeat. You don't yell, you don't fight, you don't make a scene. You just withdraw. You stop sharing. You stop talking. You stop initiating. You stop caring. You stop dreaming. You stop wanting. You become a man who's physically present, but emotionally gone. That's how a lot of marriages die without divorce. That's how a lot of men die without funerals. They just fade, and people around them don't notice at first, because fading is quiet. Fading is convenient. Then one day someone says, he's changed. No, he didn't change. He just ran out of life to give. Now here's the real war inside the mind. A defeated man isn't just sad. He's at war with himself. Part of him still wants more, still wants meaning, still wants respect, still wants a dream that feels alive. And another part of him wants safety, wants comfort, wants routine, wants to avoid embarrassment, rejection, conflict. Those two parts fight every night. That's why you can't sleep. Because you're living a life your soul didn't agree to. And before you get all poetic on me, yes, I said soul. Call it mind, call it identity, call it your core, call it whatever makes you feel less stupid. The point is, there's a part of you that knows. It knows you settled. It knows you've been pretending. It knows you've been saying yes when you mean no. Now, being cornered does something else to men. It makes them look for exits. And if you don't create a disciplined exit, your brain will create a reckless one. That's where the stupid decisions come in. The affair that just happened. The spending spree you can't afford. The drinking habit that helps you relax. The gambling just for fun. The constant porn and numb scrolling until you forget your own name. Those aren't random. They're escape attempts. Because a man who feels trapped will do anything to feel free for 5 minutes. That's why defeated men are so vulnerable to self-destruction. Not because they're weak, because they're starving. Starving for control. Starving for meaning. Starving for a life that feels like theirs. So what's the difference between a defeated man and a man who wakes up? One decision. One honest decision made before the breakdown. The man who wakes up doesn't wait for the explosion. He doesn't wait to disappear. He doesn't wait for the doctor, the divorce, the firing, the humiliation. He tells the truth early. Not dramatically, not emotionally. Cleanly. He says, this isn't working. He says, I won't live like this. He says, this is my boundary. He says, this is the timeline. He says, this is the cost I'm no longer paying. And then he acts. Quiet action. Boring action. Consistent action. That's how men escape defeat. Not by feeling inspired. By refusing to keep betraying themselves. Now, I'm not pretending this is easy. It's not. Because the defeated man's biggest addiction is comfort. Comfort is the drug. Comfort is what you use to avoid the pain of change. And change is painful. Change costs you people. It costs you identity. It costs you excuses. It costs you the story where you're the victim. But the alternative costs more. The alternative costs your future. It costs your dignity. It costs your ability to look in the mirror without flinching. So here's where we are. Alone on this road, if you feel cornered, you have a choice. You can explode and regret it. You can disappear and become invisible. Or you can do the discipline thing and build an exit. In the next part, I'm giving you that exit. A blueprint. Simple rules. No hero fantasies. No burning your whole life down. Just a way to stop being a defeated man and start being a solid one. Because solid men don't need to scream. They just stop tolerating what breaks them. All right, last part. If you're still listening, you're not completely defeated. A truly defeated man wouldn't even make it this far. He would have clicked away the moment it started to feel personal. He would have chosen distraction over truth, like always. So let's do something useful, not feelings, not philosophy, a way out. Here's the blueprint for a man who feels defeated, who feels cornered, who feels like he's been living on autopilot and calling it normal. And before you start arguing with me in your head, listen, this isn't about becoming a new person overnight. That's fantasy. This is about becoming a man who can look at himself without flinching. Rule 1, stop calling it defeat. Call it a pattern. Defeat sounds final, like a label stamped on your forehead. A pattern can be changed, so don't say, I'm a defeated man. Say, I've been living in a defeated pattern. That's honest, and honesty gives you movement. Patterns are built by repeated choices, avoiding conflict, postponing truth, staying for comfort, performing for approval. If it's repeated, it can be replaced. Rule 2, choose one area where you stop being convenient. Most men try to change everything at once because they want a dramatic rebirth. That's ego. Real change starts with one area where you stop being easy to use. Pick one: money, marriage, work, family, friends, health. And choose one small action that proves you're not furniture anymore. Not a speech, not a fight, an action. Say no to an extra demand. Turn off the phone at a set time. Stop explaining your decisions. Stop giving favors to people who wouldn't bleed for you. Stop paying the emotional tax for being the good guy. Convenient men get defeated because the world loves convenient men. Stop being convenient. Rule 3. Clean truth, not emotional truth. Here's where men mess up. They wait until they're at 120%, then they dump everything out in one ugly moment. That's how you turn honesty into chaos. Clean truth is calm truth. It sounds like, this doesn't work for me. I'm not okay with that. I won't be spoken to like that. I'm not happy. I need change. No insults. No character assassination. No revenge. Clean truth is disciplined, which means you can repeat it without losing control. And disciplined men don't get dismissed as crazy. They get taken seriously. Rule 4. Boundaries without consequences are just wishes. If you want to stop being defeated, your boundaries need teeth. Not violence, not threats, consequences. If someone crosses your line, something changes. Access, attention time, effort availability. For example, if you raise your voice at me, I end the conversation. If you keep disrespecting me, I stop showing up. If you keep using me, I stop giving. And here's the most important part. You do it calmly. A defeated man makes boundaries emotionally and breaks them when guilt hits. A solid man makes boundaries as policy and follows through even when guilt screams. Rule 5. Stop outsourcing your self-respect. Most defeated men live like this. I'll respect myself. When I make more money, my wife appreciates me. My boss recognizes me. My parents are proud. I lose weight. Life calms down. That day doesn't come. Self-respect is not a reward. It's a decision. It's what you practice when nobody claps. It's what you choose when doing the right thing makes you uncomfortable. So start acting like a man you respect, even if you don't feel like it yet. Feelings follow behavior, not the other way around. Rule 6. Rebuild meaning in small doses, daily. Defeated men chase big change because they want to erase shame. Solid men build meaning in small doses because they want a real life. Pick one thing that gives meaning. Learning, building, training. Creating, serving a purpose that isn't just paying bills. Then do it daily. Not when you feel inspired. Daily. 10 minutes. 20 minutes. 1 hour. The size doesn't matter. The consistency does. Consistency is how a man tells himself, I'm not done. And that message repeated pulls a man out of defeat. Rule 7. Accept that some people only liked the defeated version of you. This is where the blueprint becomes real. When you change, you lose things. You lose comfort. You lose old routines. You lose the illusion of peace, and you might lose people. Some people will call you selfish. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you're cold. Good, because the defeated version of you was easy to control. When you stop being controllable, manipulators get angry. Users get offended. Parasites look for a new host. Let them go. A man doesn't become solid by keeping everyone happy. He becomes solid by choosing his dignity over approval. Now, I want to leave you with the final truth about a defeated man. A defeated man isn't someone who lost a battle. A defeated man is someone who stopped fighting for his own life because he didn't want to feel discomfort. That's it. That's the definition. So if you want to stop being defeated, you don't need a miracle. You need a decision. One disciplined decision. Tonight, not Monday, not next month, not when things calm down. Things don't calm down. Life doesn't pause. You either build your way out or you stay in the corner. And if you stay in the corner long enough, you'll explode or disappear. That's not drama. That's biology. A man can only betray himself for so long before something breaks. So here's what I want from you. Yeah, I'm asking something of you. Not a like, not a subscription. I don't care about your little buttons. I want one line of truth. Write it in the comments. What's the main thing that defeated you? Money, trust, marriage, or your own fear? Kick one. And be honest, because once you name it, it stops being this invisible monster in the dark. It becomes a target. And targets can be handled. Hey, you men who think you're fine, but when night comes you can't sleep, Now you know what's been keeping you awake. I'm Trevor Phillips, driving alone, and I'll tell you something no one else will tell you. You're not finished. But you are responsible, so choose.